If you're not lifting your hands, just lift your hands. And I'm just going to have Chris keep playing on the keys here. And we're not going to sing. We're not going to say anything. I just want you to lift your hands and close your eyes. And I want you just, like you're taking a big drink, just receive him today. Just let him minister to you. I think there's something about just being quiet before him. Lord, we honor you today. And we say we must have you. In this house, in this people, we welcome you. Thank you, Lord. We honor you today. You guys can be seated. Chris is going to play here while I share for a minute. You can keep the lights down, actually, if you don't mind. Good morning, everyone. And I wanted Chris to play, and the lights to stay down. Just keeping that atmosphere of worship, because we'll probably go back into something here at the end. But we've been in this series. Well, first let me introduce myself. I'm Pastor Evan. And those of you watching online, welcome as well. And we've been in a series called We. It's, I guess we've kind of called it a vision series. And this is the last week. And how many of you know our purpose is to what? Know him and to make him known. And the first week, Pastor Landon taught on We Reach. And it's we reach beyond our four walls, inviting others into a relationship with Jesus. And then Pastor Nate did the last three on We Teach, God's Word, equipping people for their divine purpose. We serve others with our God-given talents, displaying his unconditional love. We build the church, a local strength for global impact, which was last week. And I encourage you just to go back, even if you've been here, go back and listen to all of those. Let them get in you. Let them stir in you. And then today we're going to talk about We Host. We host God's presence, creating an atmosphere for miracles. And these things, this is just something that helps us just articulate our purpose of knowing him and making him known. Because you can think knowing him and making him known, well, how do we do that? Well, these things help us see how we're doing that. So we reach, we teach, we serve, we build, and we host. And I'm so excited to just share on hosting. Hosting is actually something that's, I feel like over the last couple of years has just kind of developed more, even in my own personal life. Just with our house, we love hosting. We love having people over. And so just talking on hosting God. And really the last 5 weeks of what these have been is just a glimpse of what we feel like the Father has put in our heart, Pastor Nate and I's heart. You know, when we talked about knowing him and making him known, it's like, okay, now we need some things to help clarify that, to bring it, you know, so everyone can grab a hold of this. We can, as a church, grab a hold of this. What does that look like? And so these are just, all of the ones that we've taught on are just ones that God's just put little phrases and things in and just clarified it for us. And this hosting one I feel like is so big. All of them are big. And maybe I'm just really passionate about this, but hosting him is one of the greatest treasures. And I'm going to try not to cry through this sermon. One of the greatest treasures that we can ever do is to host him. Because, you know, there's a lot of churches. There's a lot of places. And I'm not downing on it. I'm just saying for this house will be known for a place who hosts him, who welcomes him. Over structure, over order of service, over plans. He can come in at any moment, and do what he wants to do. And I think just you can see in the church world nowadays, it's just about coming in, for the most part, coming in, hearing a sermon, doing my church duty, doing all the programs, doing all the things, you know, 3 songs, we end on this note, the band does this, you know, the person who's doing announcements has to hit that, which that's all great to have that. And we have to have structure and we have to have order. But we can't structure God out of our services. We can't structure him out of our services. We always have to come in saying, Lord, what do you want today? And you know what? He may say, do what you have right there. That's what I want. Then that's what we do. He may come in and say, you know what? I want to heal some people today. But you know what? If I'm so set in my structure and my thing, I can totally weed him out of what he's wanting to do. And so I think one of the greatest things is to remember, as a church body, that we always remember, we're in partnership with someone. We're in partnership with someone. Why we do what we do, why we gather, why we reach, why we teach, why we do all of these things is with someone, is for someone. And the moment that we lose that, it becomes based on our ability. Our ability to do all the good programs, our ability to do all the good things, our ability to have the 5-point sermon, our ability, whatever it might be. And we totally take out of the equation the power, the person. And so just this morning, just talking about hosting him and looking at a host. A host, the definition of host is a person who receives other people as guests. A person, place, or organization that holds and organizes an event to which others are invited. An area in which particular living things are found. And I love this definition. A person who receives other people as guests. We have to remember, you can say, yeah, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there he is. He's everywhere. I walk outside and there God is. I sit in my car, there God is. I'm in the bathroom, I'm in the shower, guess what? There God is. He's everywhere. You can't get away from him. He's everywhere. But there's something different about him just being everywhere and him being manifest in a place. There is a difference. You can feel it today. I had stuff on last night with the boys, and I was talking to them about it. You could feel the presence of God. We had worship. We had stuff playing. You could feel God's presence. You know, his presence is meant to be felt. His presence is meant to be experienced. You know, any time in the Bible that someone came in contact with God's presence, someone came in contact with Jesus, they were changed. Sorry, but I don't want to have church. I don't want to do this whole thing if it's not because we're being changed and people are being changed. Like, why are we in this otherwise? And so what? We have to make way for him to come in as a guest. We have to know that today, Lord, you're welcome today. You're a guest today. And you know, if I'm hosting somebody, we were talking about this a few weeks ago. If you came to me and just said, hey, my mom really wants to come to your house and whatever, I end up hosting your mom. I don't know your mom. I can host her as well as I could, making sure my house is clean, all the practical host stuff that you would do. Making sure your yard's mowed, making sure your house smells good, all of that type of practical stuff. But in order to host that person really well, I need to know them really well. So I can host well. Your mom could come to my house and I could host well. And she may be blessed, but you know what? There may be food that I serve that she doesn't really care for. There may be music that's playing that she doesn't really like. There may be a smell in my house. Have you ever walked into people's house and they have a candle, but it's that is not my scent? She could walk into my house and not like the scent that I have. But guess what? If I host her and then she comes back again and I host her again, and maybe because she's come over, I start to talk to her. I start to get to know her. You start to tell me about your mom. Guess what I'm going to be able to do? Every time I host her, I'm going to be able to do it better. I'm going to be able to do it more, you could say, intimately. Where when she comes in, she's so honored. When she steps into my house, she's so honored. This is how God should be when he comes. So honored. But if I don't make a way to host him, I can't host him well. So what's every time we come, I should be hosting him better than I did last week. Why? Because I know him better. I experienced him more. I saw him different. And when I'm talking about this, guys, it's not Pastor Evan. It's not just Pastor Nate. This is us hosting him. This is you in your home, in your car, I love Shelly flown today. In the car, in your work. He's awesome in this place. What is that? Me recognizing his presence with me. Me knowing him better so that when I'm reaching out there, but then also when we come together, we all know him. We've hosted him. We know. I heard Bill Johnson talk about just sensing, and when we did that just a moment ago about when I came up and said, we're just going to be quiet. That came from I saw that. I just had my eyes closed and I saw that. But there's other times I'll be here and I'll have my eyes closed and I'll see, healing. God's here to heal right now. Or, man, there's people who are in bondage and he wants to set them free right now. Or, man, there's a marriage. Or, Pastor Nate's had it before where we're here and he calls out someone and just says something to them. What is that? That's recognizing. That's hosting him well. That's saying he wants to do something. He wants to do something special. And that's not just to be in here. That's to be out there. But guys, guess what? In here is such good opportunities to be in his presence, to learn his presence, so that I am so full. I know him so well that then I can carry it out there. Like, if he walks in the room, so back to Bill Johnson, because I got off that, but he said he had, he was in a service, and he had, they were just doing worship. It wasn't even like a real, like you would call anointed time per se or something like that, just a regular thing. And he got up and he started sharing his sermon. And he said, all of a sudden, he said, I just sensed him. I mean, he's doing what I'm doing right now, just sharing his message. And he said, I sensed him. And he said, it's like I sensed him come through the back door. And he said, guys, stop. Everyone stop. God's here to heal right now. His presence just came in to heal. Well, what was that? That was him. He's hosted him before. So he knows. He knows when he walks in what's needed. When I know someone really well, I can tell, even if like Nate, something about him, if I can tell if he likes or doesn't like something or what. Like your spouse or someone really well, they almost don't even have to verbalize something, you just know. It's like, oh, he just did that look. Or, oh, they just did that. This is the same with the Lord. Once we know him well, we begin to know how he operates. We begin to sense him. Guys, the word of God is powerful. And like we talked about, we have to have the teaching of the word. We will always teach the word. But this house will always teach the word and will always also emphasize the Spirit and hosting the presence. It can't just be the word. It has to be the word and the Spirit. Both carry power. I'm missing part of the power if I only emphasize the word. Because you know what it'll do? It'll just get me built up in knowledge. If that's all I'm highlighting on is word, and I forget the Spirit side of it. But you know what? If I'm all about Spirit, ooh, what do you see? You see people who get loopy and really weird. And not based on the word, they get off. So what do we need? The word and the Spirit. I'm saying this end time move that God is doing in the church and through the church is going to be with the word and the Spirit. We can't negate one for the other. And so learning to recognize coming in and saying, Lord, what do you want to do today? Not Pastor Nate and Evan. I'm even talking you guys. Lord, what do you want to do today? What are you highlighting on today? And you watch what he does. He'll begin to speak and you'll begin to hear and you help cultivate that atmosphere of hosting him when you come. It's so much better to have a lot of like hosts who are on the same page. Making this, we do the cleaning, we do all of the natural things that you need to do to host well. But the greatest thing we can do is to come in, host him well, spiritually speaking. Lord, what are you saying today? And how do you do this? You practice this at home, in your own personal life. You practice this at home. Lord, what are you doing? When I'm driving to work, Lord, what are you saying today? What are you saying about my job? What are you saying about the people I'm coming in contact with? When you're in Walmart, Lord, what are you saying? What are you wanting to do right now? I mean, Ben had an awesome story that he shared with us this last week in staff about they were out school shopping, and he said just the whole day it was like, okay, Lord, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And he said he couldn't get it, the whole day. There wasn't really anyone that stood out, nothing highlighted. And then they took a walk in their neighborhood, and there was a kid. And the Lord's like, that's the one. That's the one. And he can share the story, I'm sure, but just a shortened version. But he was able to minister to that boy who had wanted nothing to do with God, didn't believe in God. He ended up praying for him. The kid got touched by the presence of God. And you know what it did? He said, can you go talk to my mom? Because you know what? When you're touched by the presence, you don't just keep it for you. You see the people that got touched by Jesus, he had to tell them sometimes, keep quiet. Why do you have to tell someone keep quiet? Because you want to talk about it. You want to talk about how good he is. And then, not only did Ben get the opportunity to talk to that mom, but then there was someone else who was a neighbor who had just moved, and he said, I was listening to you talk to that young man. And what was it that drew him? Not Ben's eloquent words, not his pre-made speech, which he didn't have, but if he would have had it. I'm serious, guys. Sometimes I think we put too much weight on our end. We put too much weight on our end. And we think the presence of God isn't practical. The presence of God isn't big enough, isn't good enough to reach someone. How are you reached? The presence of God got you. And this person was drawn because the presence of God got them. And said, you know what? I was so touched. And he said, you know what? I saw that, I think this is right. Tell me if I'm wrong. But just that there's still good people. There's still good people in the world. That's what we're to be. Taste, what does it say? Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. What does that mean? When I go, if I'm hosting well and I love to cook. So if I'm cooking a good meal, guess what? Or I go to someone's house, like we're going to his sister's here this week, and she's just like I am, so we talk over food and love food and all that. And when I go to her house and she sets out the spread of food, I see it, and man, I taste it, and every time it's good. But how much better? You know what? We owe the world an encounter with him. We owe it to them. Not based on us, but because of my time with him, because of me hosting him, because of me knowing him. That just oozes out of me. And guess what? He's there. We owe the world that. I'm tired of seeing people walk into the church broke, sick, beat down, broken relationships. And they walk in Sunday and it's still the same, and they walk out the next Sunday, and then they come back Sunday. I mean, seriously, if God is showing up and changing people's lives, we don't have to do marketing. His presence markets itself pretty well. Because if there's someone who walks in a wheelchair and they walk out not in a wheelchair, if someone walks in with Down syndrome, their child is healed and walks out of this place with no Down syndrome, and it's not just to happen in this house, it's to happen out of this house too. But I'm just saying, the presence of God, we got to learn to host him, and to host him well. And how do we do that? We got to know him. And every week we should be knowing him a little better. You know what? One week we may see he's healing. One week it may be, man, he's just coming with love. It's like every Sunday I just am like, okay, Lord, what are you saying? Even when I'm not ministering, I've told Mona before, sometimes I feel like I get as much worked up even when he's ministering, just the weightiness of him. And coming in like, Lord, you're doing something today. What are you doing? And he may just be highlighting love. I'm just sensing he wants to love people today. And you know what? If you're open, you'll hear that same word. You'll hear that same thing. He's wanting to do that today. But am I expecting him? Am I expecting him to show up when I come in? Because you know what? If I'm not expecting to host somebody and someone just shows up to my house, I can't really host them as well. Right? My yard probably is not going to be mowed. There's going to be toys all out in the yard, probably dishes in the sink, right? And someone shows up and I'm not ready. I want our body. We need to be ready to host him. Why? They need it. They need it. And I haven't even got to my notes yet, and I have like 8 pages. But let's go to this verse, Exodus 33:15. And sorry, this is not in there, guys. I just got this right before service. I forgot to tell you that. But this is Moses talking, and I love this. And I think everyone reading Exodus 33 is just such a powerful chapter about Moses hungering for God and being filled, hungering, being filled. But Exodus 33:15 says, "And Moses said to the Lord, if your presence does not go with me, do not carry us up from here." And this has to be our cry as Beyond Church. God, if your presence doesn't go with us, I don't want to go. If you don't show up Sunday, if you don't show up Wednesday, if you don't show up when we're doing events, when we're doing things in my own personal life, if you don't show up, I don't want to go. We have to get to that point. And I'm just going to read a few of my notes because there was some things I wanted to make sure I hit. That BC, Beyond Church, and the people, when I say BC, it's not a building, it's the people, would be known as a place who hosts him well. Let's go to Psalms 27:4. And we'll read it in the Amplified first. It says, "One thing I have asked of the Lord that I will seek, inquire for, and insistently require." This is David talking, "that I may dwell in the house of the Lord, in his presence all the days of my life, to behold and gaze upon the beauty of the Lord." Do you know David here was talking, one thing is just to dwell in your presence. You know, could you feel that today? Could you feel it now? Just his presence. There's just something about it. And you know, once you have a taste of it, you want more. A little story is we go to a youth camp with Chip Brim, who's going to be here in a couple weeks, but he does a youth camp. And I think it was 2 years ago, we brought Samuel, so he was in third grade, going into third grade. And they had a service where just the presence of the Lord was there. And God was just ministering. And I realized, I mean, that's where I just had a real, like, come to Jesus moment. Like, we, you know, having things in our home and stuff like that. But as far as, like Holy Ghost presence, just saturating in his presence services, you know, some of the leaders were laying hands on kids and they were being touched, you know, just those flow type services. And I realized, you know, Samuel was just like, oh, this is, you know, like his eyes are just, and I thought, he has not really experienced this yet. I grew up experiencing that. I have memories of that. I have memories of awesome services, but I also have memories of, like, presence of God hit you services, and realize, you know what? We got to have more of this in our church. We got to have more of this in the youth. We got to have more of this in our children's services, where not just us, but our kids, our youth are experiencing the presence of God. So he was so touched by that, and he actually got called up to stage and got laid hands on. I mean, he just was crying, and he was so touched by God. And he sat through a lot of services since then. And then this summer he was going again, and actually Jeremiah, Jake and Gina's oldest, was going with them. We invited them to go. And Jake had told us that I guess the boys were talking. And Jeremiah said, "What are you really excited about?" And we're going to Silver Dollar City. These are 5th graders. We're going to Silver Dollar City, I mean, Branson, like all of the fun attractions, hanging out with teenagers, kids that are older than them. They were, you know. So you would think that's what they talk about. And, you know, when Jay said, what is there to do? Like, what's the exciting thing? You know what Samuel said? Oh, sometimes they call you up on stage and they pray for you. I'm going to try not to cry. And the presence of God comes. That's what's stuck with him. From 2 years prior, a service that maybe lasted an hour or so. One experience still is with him. All the rides, all the other stuff. You know what spoke to him was this. Not this stuff. Guys, we got to get out of this. This up does nothing for us. You know, where the word comes, where you're changed, where you receive is here. So guess what? His expectation going in was not for cool rides, not for stuff. And I'm like, holy cow, these are 5th grade boys who are longing for God's presence. Are you longing for his presence? And you know, I told Pastor Nate before, seriously, I am not a crier, so I'm only with presence of God stuff. But, so I'm sorry for like bawling the whole time. But I told Pastor Nate before we left this morning, I said, I don't really know how it's, you just have those services where you study and prepare, but it's just like, okay, God, I don't know exactly how this is going to go. But I told him, I woke up last night and I just sensed that there's people who have never experienced his presence. But that ends today. And there's some of you, it's been a while. It's been a while since you've been in his presence and you've let that presence just minister to you. And God so longs to have that relationship. He so longs, you know, I think about our boys. They still ask to sleep in our room. Is it because we have a cool room? No, because you know what? If mommy and daddy were to go up to the guest bedroom, guess where the boys would want to sleep? Not in our room downstairs. They'd be up in the guest bedroom. Why? It's presence. God made us. God made us to need him. He made us to need his presence. You know, there's stuff that you can sit for one moment in his presence and you can get answers to things. You can try to rack your brain and try to figure it all out, and one moment in his presence and boom, it comes. You may have been battling something, and a moment in his presence, sickness on your body, boom, it's gone. You look at Jesus, just the lady with the issue of blood, she just knew if she could touch him, all I have to do is just touch him, and I'll be changed. And I just think this morning, specific people, but I think just as a body, just by faith, just reach out. We're going to reach out this morning as a body and just say, you know what? I'm touching him. And you know what? He knew when she touched him, he said, who touched me? And the disciples said, what do you mean, who touched you? The crowd's pressing up against you. Everyone's touching you. But you know what it was? It was that her faith. And he could feel the presence, that presence go from him. And you know what it did? It restored her to health. Ways she had tried to get healing every other way. Her situation was hopeless. But one touch from him changed everything. And I believe this morning, there's things that you may be dealing with. There's stuff that you've been battling. What you may not even know what you need, and you're just saying, God, I need a touch. But one moment with him can change it instantly. So let's just, if we could stand up. And let's just, I just saw this, so I'm gonna obey it, and we have about 15 minutes here. And if you're saying, that's me, I just want a fresh touch from God. Or you may be saying, you know what, I need a miracle. Or you may be saying, I don't know that I've ever felt the presence of the Lord. You're just hungry. And that's one word that kept coming to me this weekend is just us to be hungry again for him, hungry again for not just his word, but his presence, to experience him. And so if that's you, just come to the front. If you're just saying, it may be healing, it may be just saying, I just want to touch. I just want to experience more of him. And if that's you, I want you to come to the front. It could just be, I'm just saying I'm hungry. And you know what? I know some of you right now are saying, I wish I could walk up. You can walk up. And honestly, I believe everyone should be up here, because we can all experience more of God and a touch from his presence. And it may be saying, I don't know what I need, but you know what? Your act of faith of coming up is just like the woman